It seems to me there are a lot of similarities between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. I mean, a lot. They both appeal basically to that segment of the population that's angry with the status quo, that's angry with the elites, with the powers to be, with the what do they call them? The ruling class, if you will. And there's one issue in particular that I think both Bernie and Donald Trump bring forward. A legitimate issue, an issue that I think all of us must be concerned about, but I think neither one has an answer for. And that issue is the issue of cronyism. Now, Bernie Sanders calls it crony capitalism, and I'm sure Donald Trump calls it crony capitalism. I will not call it crony capitalism. I don't believe cronyism is a form of capitalism. It's indeed a form of statism. There's crony socialism. There's crony fascism. There's crony mixed economy statism. There's no such thing as crony capitalism. Capitalism is the one system where there's no cronyism. And one of the indications that we do not live under capitalism, that we have no capitalism in America today, is the extent to which we have cronyism in America today. Cronyism is a sign of statism. So I want to talk today. Today we're going to talk about cronyism. Why is it a problem? And, when did it become a problem? What's the source of this problem? Why do we have cronyism in America today? And how do we resolve the problem? How do we get rid of cronyism? Does Bernie Sanders, does Donald Trump, either one of them, have solutions to the problem of cronyism? Can they actually get us out of the real problems that cronyism presents us? I doubt it. But what do you think? Why do we have cronyism? Where does it come from? Bernie, Trump, are they the solution? Do you have a solution? How do we get rid of cronyism in America? If you have an opinion, if you have a point of view, give me a call. It's 847. 312-642-5600. 312-642-5600. Call in. We're going to talk about cronyism today, about where it comes from, why it's a problem, how to get rid of it, and why there's no such thing as crony capitalism. We'll get to that in the end, and you should never use the term crony capitalism. Just confuse people, right? Confuse people. All right, so let's think about this issue of cronyism. What's the issue with cronyism? Well, the idea with cronyism is that some businesses, some corporations, some people with political influence, but it's always business. It's always business. Because they have money, because they have influence, because they pay for these candidates' political campaigns, because they can lobby and they hire expensive lobbying firms, lawyers, and so on to lobby. They use government to manipulate the system, right? They use government to rig the marketplace so that they can make more money than otherwise. They get special favors. They pay less taxes. They exclude the competition from their industry. They get monopoly rents. They get monopoly profits, if you will. They get monopoly power because they're rigging the system. They're rigging the free market. And indeed, Bernie Sanders talks about it. He talks about the fact that free markets, if you leave them alone under capitalism, are rigged. And that's why he calls it crony capitalism. And I will argue that capitalism cannot be rigged. That it's only the state that can do the rigging, and therefore cronyism is a feature of statism, where we elevate the state above the individual, where we give the state power over our lives, over our economic lives, over the running of businesses, over the regulation and control of businesses. That's what creates the cronyism, is the power that we give government. But we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that. All right, so the problem is that we see cronyism all the time. We see it all around us. We see all these, as Bernie Sanders calls them, millionaires and billionaires. They take their money, they throw into the super PACs, or they give it to candidates, and then they have influence over the candidates. And that's what Donald Trump says, look, I'm one of those billionaires. I don't need other billionaires' money. So if you elect me, there won't be any cronyism because I cannot be bribed. I'm too rich to be bribed. Which is it's interesting. It's interesting. Of course, Donald Trump, one could argue, has used the crony system throughout his business career to make his billions. He has been a contributor to political campaigns. He has been a schmoozer with politicians. He has used eminent domain and other tools of government to reach his billions. But his argument is, I cannot be bribed. I cannot be seduced by money. Therefore, make me president and I will get rid of cronyism. Bernie Sanders says, I don't take money from rich guys. I take money from the people, from you. I am the representative of the people, and what we need is a movement, a revolution of the people. And therefore, I will not be corrupted by rich guys. And therefore, you should elect me, because I will rule for you. In many regards, they're saying the same thing. Bernie Sanders saying, I'm poor, and I will refuse the money of the rich guys, and therefore, and he's also an old guy, he's 70 plus years old. It's not like, he wants to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. And Donald Trump is saying, I'm already a millionaire, billionaire, I don't need this money either, just like Bernie Sanders, so I can avoid cronyism. And the assumption here is, the inherent assumption here is, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about this assumption. The assumption is that businessmen, rich guys, people who have a lot of money, they go to government and they say, we want this favor, we want that favor. And in exchange, we will give you this kind of money for your re-election campaign, and we'll give you there for the charity that you like. We'll hire your sons and daughters and your nephews and so on. And that's how cronyism comes about. It's initiated by business and poor politicians. They really want to do the right thing, but they have no choice because it's like they cannot resist the big bucks. They cannot resist the money, and the money corrupts them. And even the best of them, unless you have a strong backbone like Bernie Sanders, or you're already rich like Donald Trump, they're all ultimately going to be seduced by the money. And that's how cronyism comes about. So it's the fault of the wealthy. They're out for favors. And the poor politicians, poor both character-wise and economically poor, they have no choice. They get seduced. And it just grows, right? It just grows all the time. And indeed, when we allowed money into politics, I guess because of campaign finance reform, because that was thrown out, the Supreme Court ruled that, money contributions for campaign are speech and therefore are protected. And corporations have protection under the First Amendment. And therefore, corporations can invest in, can put money into these massive super PACs. And now we have corporations impacting politicians, and now it's really big dollars, because before it was little dollars, and now it's billions and billions of dollars going into these campaigns. And of course, now politicians really have no choice. Now they're overwhelmed by the amount of money, and they're just handing favors out left and right. They're writing checks, they're writing goodies, and they're writing laws to protect this business and that business. And this never existed in the days where we had campaign finance restrictions. If only we could get money out of politics, we're told. If only we could get money out of politics, cronyism will disappear. And what we need is to tell rich people they cannot give contributions. What we need is to get corporations out of campaign financing, and then we would solve the whole cronyism problem. It would go away. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both believe this. Restrict the free speech of rich people, of corporations, and cronyism goes away. I disagree. I'm going to give you an alternative explanation for cronyism, where it comes from. Why? Under free markets, there is no cronyism, and the solution to cronyism is capitalism. We'll be right back. So here's my favorite story about cronyism that I think illustrates where the source of the problem really is. how it all begins and how the system gets corrupted. So in the early 1990s, Microsoft was the largest company in the United States, maybe the largest company in the world. And they'd revolutionized all of our lives. They'd revolutionized the world. The world was a different place because of Microsoft. And indeed, I would argue the world was dramatically a better place because of Microsoft. They had made computers affordable. They had made computers accessible. They had made computers standardized. They had impacted the lives of almost everybody on the planet, ultimately. And they spent exactly $0 on lobbying in Washington. They weren't interested. They were not interested in lobbying. They were not interested in cronyism. They were part of a free market. They wanted to make it on their own. They didn't want any help from government. They wanted government to leave them alone, just like most entrepreneurs. Almost all entrepreneurs want to be left alone, succeed or fail on their own merit without help from Washington, D.C. Anyway, in 1994, I think it was, they were brought before Congress for a congressional hearing in front of the Senate, where the honorable senator from the state of Utah, Orrin Hatch, a Republican, by the way, started yelling at these Microsoft executives who were sitting in front of him. You guys need to start lobbying. You guys need to start investing in Washington, D.C. How come you don't have offices in D.C.? How come you don't need to spend any money here? Don't you realize we, the politicians, have power over you? You better start lobbying. You better start getting engaged in Washington. You should build a building inside the Beltway. You should show your respect for the powers to be. The executives from Microsoft were not impressed. They said, look, you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. We're not interested. And they walked out. Yay! Big fan. I'm a big fan of that attitude. Guess what happened? 2 years later, Justice Department goes after Microsoft for antitrust violation. Now, what was the sin that Microsoft committed? What was the sin? What was so awful that the Justice Department wanted to break them up, destroy this business that had changed the world, changed our lives, made the world a better place to live for almost everybody on the planet? Their sin was that they were offering a product for free. For free. How dare they? How dare you offer a product for free? And Netscape, they were offering Internet Explorer, and at the time Netscape was charging for the browser, and Netscape was saying, this is wrong, antitrust violation, help us. And the Justice Department did. Of course, maybe if Microsoft had lobbied, they wouldn't have. Maybe if Microsoft had played the game, they would have left them alone. But Microsoft wasn't playing the game, so they got nailed by the government. And you could argue, and I would argue, that Microsoft has never been the same company again. Innovation is down. Their success is down. They've been outcompeted. Because when the government steps in through the Justice Department, starts regulating, starts controlling, there's been a government employee at Microsoft supervising Microsoft from 1990-something until about 2 or 3 years ago. For over 10 years, they were under the watchful eye of the bureaucracy. That crushes innovation. When you put a bureaucrat inside the office of the CEO, you crush innovation. You crush success. Microsoft has never been the same company again. But you know what? They learned their lesson. They spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying in Washington today. They built a beautiful building inside the Beltway. Beautiful building inside the Beltway. And now they lobby. And once you start lobbying, it's corrupting. Once you start lobbying, you don't just do it for your own self-defense. It's not just that you protect yourself against the Justice Department. Now you've got a bunch of lawyers. Now you've got a bunch of lobbyists who are giving you advice. And now You start using your lobbying to do all the bad things that we associate with cronyism. You start telling the government that your competitors are no good. You start unleashing the Justice Department on your competitors, not just protecting yourself, but harming others. You start rigging the tax code and the regulatory code for your benefit at the expense of others. It's just the nature of the game. But notice who starts this. Notice what starts cronyism. Government power. Government power. When government can regulate, when government can control, when government can determine the fate of your business, business will fight back. Business will lobby. And guess what happens? That lobbying gets corrupted. And now they start doing bad things. But the lobbying doesn't happen without government initiating force against business. Government is the problem. Government power is the problem. Government force is the problem. Regulations, controls, a crazy, nutty, complex tax code is the problem. And unless you fix that problem, cronyism is going to be with us. Cronyism will not go away. Cronyism is just business trying to protect themselves and being corrupted in the process, no question. And corrupting in the process, no question. I know a lot of people who, people think of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump as two opposites on the opposite spectrum. And yet, I know a lot of people who are trying to make up their minds who they're going to vote for, Sanders or Trump. Because I think both appeal to the same frustration that Americans have. And one of the big frustrations that they have is about cronyism, is about they detest corporate welfare, they detest the bailouts. Yeah. But can Bernie Sanders end bailouts? Will Bernie Sanders end corporate welfare? Or will he just shift it from the industries he dislikes to the industries he likes? Would Donald Trump end corporate welfare or end crony capitalism? Can either one of them do it? And if so, how would they do it? See, I don't think either one of them can stop crony capitalism. Why? Because they both believe in big government. They both believe in intrusive government. They both believe in a government that regulates and controls and taxes corporations and businesses. And big government necessitates cronyism. Because big government means interventionist government. It means government that intervenes in our lives and in the lives of businessmen, in the lives of corporations. And when that happens, they're going to fight back. Business is going to fight back. Corporations are going to fight back. Individuals, if we have the money, we'll fight back. Most of us don't have the money or the resources to fight back. We're screwed. And they'll fight back. They'll fight back by hiring lawyers, by building buildings in Washington, D.C. And now that's cronyism. That's where it comes from. You cannot have big government and no cronyism. Big government necessitates cronyism. How do you decide what kind of regulations you should have? Dodd-Frank was passed, this massive regulations of the banks. How do they decide how to regulate the banks? Well, they don't know anything. They're not experts, even at the regulatory agency. So what do? They invite the bankers in, and they sit down around a table, and they negotiate. And the bankers who pound the table hardest, who put up the most money for campaigns, get the best deals. And the regulators just go along, because you know what? The regulators, they want a job after they leave the regulatory agency, usually at the banks they've been regulating or the businesses they've been regulating. Big bailouts. What do you guys think about bailouts? Good, bad? Should the government bail out business, small business, big business, too big to fail business? What should be the criteria, the standards for bailout? What do you think about bailouts, about cronyism in America today? Now, I'm against bailouts. All bailouts. I'm against any government subsidies, any government preferences, any government bailouts. I think the government should be removed from economics. I don't think they should be involved in economic decision-making. I don't think they should be involved in business. I don't believe in loopholes. We can talk about corporate taxes in a little bit. But let's stay on bailouts for a minute. How can the government not bail out businesses when the government has said that it's responsible for our economic well-being. When GM and Chrysler are on the verge of bankruptcy, and the government believes it's its responsibility to provide jobs and to create economic activity and take care of the working class Americans, then what are they going to do? Let these companies go bankrupt? And by the way, these companies are going bankrupt. Why? To a large extent because of all the regulations imposed on them by government. Fuel standard regulations, safety regulations, and of course labor laws that have protected them from years from actually dealing with the unions in a straightforward manner, and have protected unions, given them favorable treatment, and as a consequence, bankrupted the American auto industry. So the American auto industry is now bankrupt. Should we bail them out? Now, Bernie, I would bet anything you want that Bernie would say yes. Cronyism is fine, according to Bernie, as long as it doesn't come from Wall Street. And Donald Trump, he would say absolutely we should bail out the auto industry because it's the Chinese fault and the Mexicans' fault. And we need to rip those Chinese a new one. And to do that, we're going to bail out our auto industry. These guys are not against cronyism. They're just against the kind of cronyism they don't happen to like. What would Bernie or Trump do? Would they bail out the auto industry like George Bush and Obama did? Or would they let him go bankrupt like I would? I don't believe in bailouts. Any bailouts. Not an auto industry bailouts. Not the solar panel bailouts. Not a wind farm bailouts. Not an oil and gas bailouts. No bailouts. No government bailouts. No government choosing winners and losers. Or helping the losers in this case. How bad is that? But no, the bailouts they were against are bank bailouts. But of course, when you look at who voted for the bank bailouts, the left has always been for bank bailouts. Because they realize that bank bailouts give them the ability to control the banks. There's a deal between government and Wall Street. We get to regulate the hell out of you. We get to dictate everything that you do. You get as big a bonuses as you want. And by the way, when you go under, we will bail you out. That's a deal cut in D.C. between Wall Street and Washington. I'm against that deal. I would let the banks fail. But I would also eliminate all those stupid regulations that restrict them from doing business properly and incentivize them from doing stupid things, really stupid things. But again, I bet you anything that Bernie and Trump would bail out the banks. Bernie and Trump are not anti-cronyism. They use the terminology. They're definitely against campaign financing by big corporations. But when it comes down to it, they want government involved in the economy. They want government controlling the economy. And with that control, with that involvement, come bailouts. Particularly for Bernie. Bernie's a socialist. I mean, the way Bernie would bail them out is he would put them under government control. He would nationalize them. I mean, does anybody have any doubt that when an emergency came and Bernie was president, he wouldn't nationalize banks or he wouldn't nationalize the auto companies for a while at least? That's what socialists do. And that's the ultimate cronyism. So, no, these guys don't want to end cronyism. They want to make government bigger, more powerful, stronger, more involved, more engaged in the economy, and therefore more likely to bail people out. I say we're against all bailouts. You know, when the Occupy Wall Street was happening, it was funny because they were occupying Wall Street. Why not occupy Detroit? Because they hate Wall Street and they like Detroit. I would occupy all these places. Stop cronyism, period, which means it's time to stop regulating business. It's time to stop controlling business. And it's time to stop taxing corporations. We'll get back and talk a little bit about corporate taxes right after this break. So I'm against all bailouts. Bailouts on principle. And you won't find a single political candidate out there who agrees with that. They all hedge their bets. They're all key. They want power. And power means power over people, over businesses, over corporations. I want zero cronyism. And to get zero cronyism, I want to eliminate the power that politicians have over business, over corporations. And if they have zero power, business and corporations have no incentive to lobby them. No incentive to lobby them. And, you know, a lot of people talk about cronyism these days because it's become part of the inequality debate. It's become part of the inequality debate because we're told that the way the rich get rich is by manipulating the system through cronyism. And that's why we need to take it away from them. I say if that's true, if the rich are really getting rich because of cronyism, let's eliminate cronyism. And the way to do that, let's eliminate the power of politicians to give favors to businessmen. And the only way to do that is to restrict the role of government, to restrict the power of government to what it should be, what the founders of this country believed it should be, which is the protection of our rights, protection of our individual rights, protection of us from the coercion from our neighbor, from other governments, from terrorists, and from the government itself. That's what we have a Bill of Rights for, to protect us from government. But the inequality debate has made cronyism a big deal and has made cronyism appear to be the reason why the rich are the rich. Not by producing stuff. They didn't become rich by producing stuff, we are told, but by cronyism. And that's just nonsense. Absolutely. We have to go to break, but I just want to mention one more thing about corn. You know, the corn farmers really lobby for tariffs on sugar. They want sugar to be really, really expensive. You know why? Because that way we use corn syrup in our drinks and not sugar. Because sugar is so expensive in the United States. If we imported, if we had no tariffs, sugar would be less than half the price of corn syrup, and all our drinks would have sugar. So these subsidies, so-called subsidies, massively distortive, massively anti-capitalist. When Sean talks about the fact that this is not capitalism, that none of this is consistent with capitalism, he's absolutely right. And indeed, we don't have capitalism in America. We haven't had capitalism in America in a long time. Because my view is capitalism means free markets. It means a government that respects property rights and does everything to protect property rights and nothing more. It means a society in which all property is privately owned. We haven't had capitalism really from day one in this country, but certainly for the last 100, 120 years, we've been moving away from capitalism systematically, consistently. I don't care if there's a Republican, a Democrat, who's in the White House, who's in Congress. Capitalism is disappearing from this country. Is disappearing from this country because power-grubbing politicians, in the name of morality, in the name of the public interest, in the name of doing good, have usurped power, have violated the Constitution, have violated the principles on which this country was founded, to usurp power, to take control, to regulate, to tax, to influence business at all levels. And as a response to that, business has fought back. And in fighting back, it has been seduced into this power game. We today in America have a mixed economy. A little bit of free markets, lots of government. And when I say free markets, what do we mean? What do we mean free? Freedom means lack of coercion. Freedom means the ability to act as you see fit without being forced to act against your will. We don't have that anymore. You can't start whatever business you want. You can't bring to market whatever product you want. You need government permission for everything today. We don't have free markets. We don't have capitalism in this country. And what we have is a mixed economy, a crony economy, an economy where government and some businessmen get together to decide our fates, their fates. And the only way to dismantle this system is not Bernie Sanders. It's not Donald Trump. Maybe the closest we get is a Ted Cruz, who fights against ethanol subsidies in Iowa. In Iowa. That takes balls. And fights against TOP. Fights against the auto bailouts. That's what we need in a presidential candidate, is somebody who's willing to fight against government involvement in the economy. Because once government stops getting involved in the economy, the incentive to lobby, the incentive to influence goes away. And then we have real competition. We have real innovation. We have businesses trying to better one another in the marketplace instead of in politics. So what we advocate for in this show, what Ayn Rand advocated for, is laissez-faire capitalism. A complete separation of state from economics. No involvement of the state in our economic affairs. Let the free market reign. Because when it does, we prosper. All of us prosper. And when he does, it means that each one of us is free. Free to deal with whatever businesses we want to deal with. Free to take whatever job we want to take or not take. Free to buy whatever products we want or not. Free to start our own business or not. Freedom means freedom from coercion. And the Founding Fathers knew that the most coercive element, the most coercive entity in human history is government. That's why we have a Bill of Rights and a Constitution to protect us from them. That's what we need to return to. And only then will cronyism disappear. So don't buy into the rhetoric